Hi everyone. Last time we covered the objective resolution. We take that lesson forward by starting the preamble of the Constitution and understanding what it means and how it contributes to the basic philosophy of the Indian Constitution. Let's get right into it. I have put on your screen a debate from Shibban Lal Saxena. He was a representative from the central provinces, what we now call as Uttar Pradesh. And on the topic of discussing what should the preamble read like, he had the following to say. He said, "In the name of God the Almighty, under whose inspiration and guidance the father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi, led the nation from slavery into freedom by unique adherence to the eternal principles of Satya and Ahimsa." As you can see here, he has emphasized the need to include God as well as Mahatma Gandhi, whom we now know as the father of the nation, in the Constitution, in the preamble itself. He further added that we the people of Bharat, please note the usage of the word Bharat, we will come back to that, having solemnly resolved to constitute into a sovereign, independent, democratic, socialist republic and to secure all its citizens this day of Vikram Samvat 2006. Vikram Samvat, as you know, is the calendar, a Hindu calendar. You might be confused why 2006 is written here, but it is equivalent of 1950 AD at that time. So let's discuss the particular points that have been mentioned in this debate excerpt. So we'll come back to that. We'll talk about in the name of God. There was a debate that went on this. Should we or should we not include God in the preamble? As you know, India is a secular state. The Indian government does not support any particular religion, and all religions command equal respect in this country. You are free to profess, propagate or practice any religion of your liking. You can even choose not to have a religion if you wish to do so. So putting the word God in the preamble might have had created some issues with this principle. Additionally, there was a Constituent Assembly member who believed that it was unfortunate to put the concept of God on vote itself. When I say on vote, it means that the Constituent Assembly was voting on everything that was being discussed in the Assembly. It would be unfortunate to vote on God, a concept who is so dear and near to everyone's hearts. Second, on the concept of father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi. As you know, the Indian Constitution is not an entirely original document. It has been heavily borrowed from the Government of India Act 1935. It also incorporates principles from the Objectives Resolution, as we discussed previously. However, one of the members believed that this constitution was not a Gandhian constitution. As you know, the Gandhian principles of democracy included self-rule, that is Swaraj. He believed that having a government, having a state itself, would not suit Indians as it is an instrument of coercion and of power. He also believed that the actual economy stems from the villages. As we all know, Indian economy as of now does not stem heavily from villages but from the industries at the national and state levels. So many members believed that this was not a constitution that reflected the Gandhian ideals. Someone also said that you should not bring him into the constitution that may be changed and reshaped at any time. He did not want that Gandhiji's name should be brought into a constitution that is not even permanent for India. Lastly, there was a debate on the topic whether India should be called a Union of Indian Socialist Republics, UISR. Does this sound familiar? Does this not sound like the USSR? There was a Constituent Assembly member, Mr. Hasrat Mohani, who believed that there was no harm in using the term UISR as the federal structure of India greatly matched that of Russia's. He believed that the federal structure in India greatly resembled that of Russia, with the distribution of powers between the union and the constituent states, and a centrifugal federal scheme where the states or republics could willingly hand over certain powers to the center. Lastly, however, there was an issue that not everyone agreed with. He argued that there should be freedom to the constituent units, that is what we call the states, to leave the federation if something was against your interest. This is a recurrent issue that we see even now, with a lot of states demanding autonomy or even separate statehood. India has been constantly firm on its belief that as a union, you cannot separate from the state. You can have more autonomy, but you cannot have separate statehood. So a lot of members believe that UISR as a name would not be suitable to be used in the preamble. Now let's move forward. So on the left of your screen, you have the preamble as it was originally written, and on the right of the screen is the preamble after 42nd Amendment of 1976. As you know, 42nd Amendment was also called the mini constitution. We'll get more into it. There are certain things that I would like to highlight. There are 3 terms that were added by the 42nd Amendment: socialist, secular, and integrity. Let's look into each term and understand what they mean before we analyze what this amendment changed. We the people of India. We the people of India means the ultimate sovereign, the ultimate power to rule rests with the Indian people and not the government. The government that we have is an elected government. It's what we chose. We have delegated our sovereignty for purposes of easing the governance to these elected representatives. But the ultimate sovereignty remains with the people. So that's what we call popular sovereignty. So we the people of India is a hint towards India's popular sovereignty. Then there is, if we move forward, it says, havingly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign democratic republic. A sovereign country means there is no higher authority to which the country is answerable to. As we know, we were under the rule of the Britishers for decades. Having gained independence in 1947, being able to make our own political decisions was a big deal for Indians. They did not want to lose out on their newly gained independence, and that's why they highlight that we as Indians are a sovereign state. There is no one whom we are answerable to, whom we should follow anymore. Further, it will be a democratic country. As we said, the Indian people are the ultimate authority in India. Republic means we would have an elected head. The head would not be a monarch or someone chosen from a family, but anyone whom we choose as a head for this country. Further on, it says to secure all its citizens. Justice, there are 3 types of justice mentioned here: social, economic, and political. The term justice means fairness in very simple terms. So it says that justice in all 3 spheres is important, not only political, but also social and economic. Social justice means I, as a person, have equal dignity to anyone else in this country, and just because I belong to a certain identity, I will not be treated unfairly by anyone, be it the state or be it a private person. Economic justice would mean that there should not be too much of a divide between the rich and the poor. The resources of the countries should be allocated in a manner that is just. Political justice means that people have an equal, free and fair right without any discrimination to participate in political opportunities. I, as a person belonging to any identity, have an equal opportunity and right to represent myself, to my political beliefs, or to even contest elections. Liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith and worship. Liberty of thought and expression is what we understand as Article 19 in the Constitution, and this is something that has been mentioned in the preamble as well. Of belief, faith and worship. This talks about the freedom to choose any religion that we want to, freedom to profess any religion if we wish to, and freedom, as I said in the beginning, to not have a religion at all if we want to. Equality of status and opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity. If there is no equality in the society, it is very hard to ensure fraternity. Let's take an example. If there are 2 people, one of them has been treated poorly because they belong to a certain social status, and the other gets all the privileges because they belong to another social status, that would not be able to promote fraternity between those 2 people. To understand fraternity, we need to understand that it is a feeling, it is an emotion of belonging to a common identity, belonging and brotherhood. We cannot inculcate brotherhood without people being equal. That's why this was included in the preamble. Lastly, it is said that in our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, we hereby adopt, enact and give to ourselves this Constitution. Do you know when the Constitution Day is celebrated? It's on 26th November. This is the reason. On the 26th day of November, we officially adopted the Constitution. However, we do celebrate Republic Day on 26th January and not on this day. Have you ever considered that? Why? It's because we officially ratified the Constitution on 26th January, even though we had adopted it on 26th November. So that is something that you might find interesting. Second, there are three terms that we have not discussed yet, because these terms were added in 1976 by the 42nd Amendment. This amendment did a lot of things. These were a few of them. It's also called the mini constitution because of the sheer size and impact that it had on the constitution. We'll discuss it in the context of the preamble. So, socialist. It talks about the economic scheme of this country. If you remember, we talked that there should be economic justice. It was a belief of primarily Jawaharlal Nehru that India needs to be a socialist country to ensure economic justice. Socialism means that the state owns the means of production, that is land, capital, labor. These are not to be owned by private individuals, but rather the state holds it. The state controls and regulates it on their behalf to ensure that everyone gets equal resources, or at least as close to equal as possible. There should not be a person who is dying of hunger. On the other hand, there is another person who is able to buy a Lamborghini every second day. That is what socialist meant. And then there was also the addition of secular. If you remember, we mentioned that there will be a liberty of belief, faith and worship. That is what we understand as secularism, that all religions command equal respect and the state shall not give any religion preference. You might ask, why did we add these two terms? Their ideas were already there in the preamble. The logic given for that was that these need to be highlighted in this country at this point. Lastly, we also added the term integrity of the nation. Integrity of the nation, if you remember, I was talking about the idea of USSR and federalism and how India had a similar scheme. I talked then that India is a union. No state has the right to secede from the union. No matter how many demands they might make of state autonomy or a separate statehood, India's constitution does not allow for that. And this is something that has been highlighted in the preamble itself. Now that we have read the preamble itself, let's understand its nature. The key features. So, it is an introduction to the constitution itself. Before you open any book, there is an introduction to that book. You see the back cover of the book and you are able to realize, oh, this book talks about this. Similar to that, the constitution needed an introduction. Before you read the entire bulk of the book, you can understand what India will be like. You will be able to gain an idea of what the Indian society would be. So, the preamble is an apt introduction. It was based largely on the objectives resolution that we have discussed previously. It has also been considered an insight into the minds of the constitution makers. This was decided in this very landmark case of Berubari Union. It was said so because it allowed for the people interpreting the constitution in the later times, that is mostly the Supreme Court, that if we are not able to decide on which direction we should take to understand a law, we can look at the preamble to understand our judgments and our decisions. It is also a part of the constitution. It is not separate from the constitution. As I said, it is an introduction to the constitution. Have you ever considered, can preamble be amended? In the landmark case of Keshav Nand Bharti, it was said that it can be amended. However, it gave us doctrine that we now call the basic structure doctrine. What this doctrine says is that there are certain key essential features that make India, India as we know it. And this can be understood briefly from looking at the preamble. There were other elements as well, like independence of judiciary, rule of law, etc. But as we remember, this insight into the minds of constitutions combined with this doctrine, it gives preamble a very special place. It is a part of the constitution. It can be amended if needed, as we can see from the 42nd Amendment. However, you cannot remove it entirely because it forms the very basis of the constitution. You can even not amend it in a way that violates the basic structure, the basic idea of India. It is non-justiciable. Non-justiciable means you cannot go to the Supreme Court or any court as a matter of fact and demand that your rights be met on the basis of the preamble. It is only a guide, not a right. This was discussed in the case of Union Government versus LIC in 1995. Lastly, it is also a litmus test for other laws' justiciability. If you connect the basic structure doctrine and the idea that the preamble is an insight into the minds of constitution makers, it is very logical that you should consider that preamble is a litmus test to test whether the other laws are in accordance with the ideas of the constitution itself. That's why we call it a litmus test. So, now that we have looked at the objectives resolution in the previous lesson and now that we have looked at the preamble, if you combine the two, I think you will be able to gauge the basic philosophy that went into making of the Indian Constitution. First, Constitution of India is not merely a political or legal document, it is a charter of citizenship values. Citizenship values. You as an Indian citizen have certain rights as well as duties which can be understood by looking at the preamble. If I say there is a right to equality, you also have a duty to ensure that your treatment towards others is not discriminatory. It is a framework of good governance to ensure that there is free and fair governance, to ensure that there is welfare actually happening on the ground. The Constitution and the preamble specifically is a great guide to see how we should be making our policies. It is a commitment. The objective resolution, if you remember, Jawaharlal Nehru mentioned that it is a pledge. Similarly, the preamble, which has been based on the objectives resolution, is a commitment to freedom, equality, social justice and national unity. It also emphasizes on peaceful and democratic measures for putting this philosophy into practices. It emphasizes that there has to be a rule of law. If you have any issues, if you have any problems in the country, you cannot solve it through violence or through disputes. You have to do it in a peaceful and democratic way, be it a state, be it people. Respect for diversity and minority rights. As we know, India is an extremely diverse country, and with so many people living here with multiple identities, it becomes necessary that they do not feel afraid or marginalized in their own country. As an Indian citizen, if I am made to feel like a third class or a second class citizen, it is not fair. That's why it emphasizes a respect for diversity and minority rights. It is a living document which was not adopted but evolved. Till date, there have been more than 100 constitutional amendments. This is one of the bulkiest constitutions of the world, and in the 70 or so years that we have been independent, it has been amended more than 100 times. That is a fact that points that this is a very flexible constitution, and if there is a need for change, the parliament or even the constitution makers, they allowed us that the constitution should not be as rigid so as to not meet the needs of the society. That concludes our lesson on the preamble. Now, in your comments, I hope you will be able to give your own thoughts on some contemporary issues. Recently, there has been a debate about changing the name of India to Bharat. I hope you will be contributing to this lesson by giving your own opinions on this. And also, there has been a very recent news in which certain Lok Sabha member pointed out that the words secular and socialist, which were added in the 42nd amendment, were not present in the copies of the constitution that were given to them during a discussion. And this has created a sort of debate that should their removal be done and what will happen if they are removed. I hope to see your comments on this and your thoughts on this. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next lesson.